What if the foods that could actually keep your family alive during a real crisis are the exact foods nobody in the prepping world is talking about? I have 13 items sitting in my basement right now. No forum posts about them, no mentions in any prepper group I belong to. I have deliberately stayed quiet about these, and I have done that on purpose. These are not the foods you see on survival blogs or in videos where someone's wearing a vest with 17 pockets. But during the last 3 serious supply chain breakdowns, while everybody else was elbowing each other over the same 3 products, I was walking store aisles with zero competition, loading up my cart without a single raised eyebrow. One item on this list has been sitting fully stocked on store shelves for 2 straight years, untouched, ignored. And it delivers more protein per dollar than almost anything the mainstream prepping community recommends. Another one has been keeping people alive at sea for 4 centuries, costs almost nothing, and has a shelf life so extreme that researchers genuinely cannot determine an expiration point. When you hear about that one, you are going to wonder why it never crossed your mind before. Here is the real problem with the prepping community right now. Everyone is watching the same channels, reading the same posts, and buying the same things. The echo chamber runs deep. When an actual shortage happens, the very first things to vanish are the ones everybody told you to stockpile. I watched it happen in real time during March of 2020. A giant pallet of rice at my local warehouse store was completely stripped within 2 hours. Pasta was gone before noon. Canned soup lasted less than a full day. But every single item I am about to walk you through was still sitting there, fully available 3 days later. Let's get into it. The first food is shelf-stable lard in a box. This one is going to make some people uncomfortable, and that is exactly why I am leading with it. Not the refrigerated tub from the dairy section. I mean the rendered hydrogenated lard sold in cardboard packaging on a regular grocery shelf. Before you default to health concerns, think about what survival actually demands. In a genuine crisis, calorie deficiency will hurt you far faster than dietary cholesterol ever could. Lard delivers more calories per ounce than almost any other storable food. 1 tablespoon alone carries 115 calories of pure usable energy. Last year, I was reading actual pioneer journals, personal diaries written by people crossing the Oregon Trail. The food they mentioned more than anything else was lard. It carried them through brutal winters. It gave their bodies the fat they desperately needed. It did not spoil across months of travel without refrigeration. I ran my own test. I bought a box of shelf-stable lard 3 years ago and left it in my garage. Summer temperatures out there climb to 95 degrees. Winter drops to 20. Last month, I cracked it open, no off smell, no change in color, completely usable. But caloric density is only part of the story. Lard has applications far beyond cooking. You can make soap from it, you can use it as the base for wound salves. In a real emergency, it can even fuel an oil lamp. A 3-pound box costs around $4.50. That works out to over 5,000 calories for less than $5. When cooking oils completely disappeared from store shelves in 2020, shelf-stable lard was sitting there with not a single hand reaching for it. I keep 30 pounds in my stockpile, and nobody fights me for it. The second food is canned fish roe. This one sounds extreme until you look at the nutritional data, and then it sounds like the smartest thing you have ever heard. Fish roe, fish eggs, sealed in small cans. I stumbled onto this in a European grocery store a couple of years ago completely by accident. When I went home and looked up what I had actually bought, the numbers floored me. Fish roe is among the most nutrient-dense foods that can be stored on a shelf. Omega-3 fatty acids at levels that dwarf most other sources, vitamin B12, vitamin D, selenium, and a very high concentration of complete protein, all in a can smaller than your fist. Here is why this matters specifically for emergency nutrition. Standard prepper staples like rice and beans contain almost zero healthy fat. Your brain runs on fat. When dietary fat disappears, cognitive function slips, mood crashes, decision-making under stress becomes genuinely impaired. Fish roe is essentially concentrated fuel for your nervous system. I tested this on myself last winter. For 5 days, I ate a typical prepper baseline: rice, beans, canned vegetables. By day 4, I was tired, irritable, and struggling to concentrate. I then added 1 small can of fish roe every other day for the following 5 days. The difference was not subtle. Energy levels came back, my thinking sharpened, my mood leveled out. I now keep around 50 small cans in my stockpile. Total cost was roughly $60. Most Americans have never eaten fish roe in their lives, which means during any shortage, it stays exactly where it is, right on the shelf, waiting for you. The third food is dried whole corn kernels, not popcorn, not cornmeal, whole, dried field corn, the kind your great-grandparents actually stored. You can still find it at feed stores and in bulk sections at certain groceries, and it's almost absurdly inexpensive. Stored correctly, it holds for 10 years or more. You can grind it into meal for cornbread, you can soak it in lime water to produce masa, which is what entire ancient civilizations relied on as a staple. You can even sprout it during winter when fresh food is unavailable. Research into the Dust Bowl era shows families surviving for extended periods almost entirely undried.
They bought it in 50-pound sacks for nearly nothing and stretched it across months. Last summer, I picked up 50 pounds of dried corn for $18. Thousands of calories for less than $20. What most preppers also do not realize is that soaking dried corn kernels in lime water overnight, a process called nixtamalization, lets you produce fresh corn tortillas from scratch without any wheat. In a long-term situation, the ability to make bread without flour is enormously valuable. During the last shortage I watched personally, dried corn sat completely undisturbed at my local feed store, while rice and beans were stripped clean across town. The fourth food is black garlic. This one is a bit pricier than what we've covered so far, but the value it provides is different from simple calories. Black garlic is regular garlic that has been slow-aged through a controlled fermentation process. It turns dark, develops a sweet and complex flavor, and here is the critical part: it becomes fully shelf-stable without any refrigeration. Black garlic carries roughly double the antioxidant content of fresh garlic. It's been shown in multiple studies to support immune function, which during any prolonged crisis is not a luxury, it's a strategic necessity. Stress, poor sleep, and a restricted diet all suppress immune response. Black garlic works as a long-term insurance policy against that. It also tastes genuinely remarkable on its own. Think balsamic vinegar with a quiet garlic note underneath. You can eat it straight or add it to rice, soups, or anything that needs depth of flavor. A pound runs around $40 online. I keep 24 cans in rotation. In a real crisis, that value is immeasurable. The seventh food is canned cheese. I know how that sounds, stay with me. There are European producers who seal real aged firm cheese inside cans. Not cheese sauce, not a processed spread, actual cheese. I found a brand at a specialty food shop about 2 years ago. When I opened the can, I expected disappointment. What I got was genuinely good aged cheese that had been sitting at room temperature for 6 months. Shelf life typically runs 2 to 3 years, and like all aged cheese, it tends to improve rather than degrade with time when stored properly. Beyond nutrition, and cheese does deliver meaningful protein, fat, and calcium, there's a psychological dimension here that preppers consistently underestimate. Morale is a survival variable. During a 5-day camping trip last fall, our group was running on freeze-dried meals. By day 3, the energy in camp had noticeably flattened. I pulled out a can of canned cheese. The reaction was immediate and completely genuine. People's mood shifted. That's the power of real food in a situation where everything else feels diminished. A can runs $10 to $15. I keep 24 cans in rotation. In a real crisis, that value is immeasurable. The eighth food is hardtac. 400 years of maritime survival history do not lie. Hardtac is a dense, dry cracker made from flour, water, and salt, baked until it reaches something approaching the hardness of ceramic tile. And because of that, it lasts an almost incomprehensible amount of time. Archaeologists have documented Civil War hardtack that is over 150 years old and still technically fit to eat. For any situation where you're moving and weight matters, hardtac gives you maximum caloric payload per ounce of carried weight. Sailors calculated this centuries ago. Last year, I made a batch using a Civil War-era recipe. That was 14 months ago. Last week, I pulled a piece out, soaked it in hot coffee for a few minutes, and ate it. Completely fine. Actually, pretty good. The cost to make it yourself is nearly nothing. I produced 20 pounds for about $12 in flour and salt. That translates to thousands of calories that will literally outlast generations. No exotic ingredients, no special equipment, just a bowl, an oven, and a few hours. The sixth food is canned butter. A lot of people do not even know this product exists, and that's exactly the gap in most stockpiles. Real butter, not powdered, not a substitute, sealed inside cans. It's made primarily in New Zealand and parts of Europe and has a shelf life of 3 to 5 years at room temperature. Polar expedition teams have trusted it for decades because it handles extreme conditions without failing. Here's why fat specifically matters, and not just any calorie source. A contact of mine spent a month testing his own stockpile. Rice, beans, canned vegetables, the standard setup. By the second week, he was dropping weight fast. He felt cold constantly. His thinking went foggy. His body was metabolically starving for fat despite consuming enough calories on paper. I told him about canned butter. Within days of adding it to his meals, his energy stabilized, his body temperature returned to normal, and his focus came back. A 12-ounce can runs between $12 and $15. I keep 24 cans in rotation. In a real crisis, MAT value is immeasurable. The seventh food is canned cheese. I know how that sounds. Stay with me. There are European producers who seal real aged firm cheese inside cans. Not cheese sauce, not a processed spread, actual cheese. I found a brand at a specialty food shop about 2 years ago. When I opened the can, I expected disappointment. What I got was genuinely good aged cheese that had been sitting at room temperature for 6 months. Shelf life typically runs 2 to 3 years, and like all aged cheese, it tends to improve rather than degrade with time when stored properly. Beyond nutrition, and cheese does deliver meaningful protein, fat, and calcium, there's a psychological dimension here that preppers consistently underestimate. Morale is a survival variable. During a 5-day camping trip last fall, our group was running on freeze-dried meals. By day 3, the energy in camp had noticeably flattened. I pulled out a can of canned cheese. The reaction was immediate and completely genuine. People's mood shifted. That's the power of real food in a situation where everything else feels diminished. A can runs $10 to $15. I keep 24 cans in rotation. In a real crisis, that value is immeasurable. The eighth food is malted milk powder. This one has been in plain sight for over 100 years, and the prepping community has somehow walked right past it. Malted milk powder was originally developed in the late 1800s specifically as a shelf-stable, easily digestible nutrition source for infants and explorers. The formulation was engineered to survive without refrigeration and deliver concentrated nourishment quickly. Stored in sealed airtight containers, it holds for 3 to 5 years. You can mix it into water as an instant drink, add it to baked goods for a nutrition boost, or blend it into other foods without altering flavor much.
During the Second World War, soldiers carried malted milk tablets as compact emergency rations because they delivered substantial energy in very little space. The malting process also partially breaks down complex milk sugars, making it easier to digest than standard powdered milk, which matters when people are already stressed and digestion is compromised. I keep 10 pounds in my stockpile, purchased in bulk for around $60. That covers over 100 servings. My kids will actually drink it without a fight, which during a stressful period is not a small thing. During shortages, this product is routinely ignored. The ninth food is canned pork, and I do not mean the familiar pink rectangle in a blue tin or the little cocktail sausages in a jar. I mean actual cuts of pork, shoulder or loin, pressure sealed in their own juices and fully cooked before canning. This product exists primarily in Eastern European and Asian market sections, and it is exceptional. Shelf life runs 3 to 5 years. You open the can, and the meat is ready to eat immediately. Most prepper protein sources require planning to be complete. Rice and beans combined form a complete protein, but that combination demands deliberate meal assembly. Canned pork is complete protein in a single container. One can delivers 30 to 40 grams. I found cans at a Russian grocery for about $4 each. Compare that to freeze-dried protein sources at $12 to $15 per serving. I keep 30 cans rotating through my stockpile. Look specifically for brands from Poland, Hungary, or East Asian producers. The international aisle at most stores is an untapped resource during any shortage, because when the American food section is stripped bare, those shelves are still full. The 10th food is canned brown bread.
If you did not grow up in New England, this is going to sound like something I invented. I did not. Canned brown bread is a traditional regional food, a dense, dark loaf made from whole wheat, rye flour, cornmeal, and molasses, sealed inside a standard tin can and completely shelf-stable. I found it by accident at a store in Boston. Shelf life is typically 2 years, though I have spoken with people who opened 5-year-old cans without any problem. Think about what is missing from almost every prepper stockpile. Bread. Real, ready-to-eat bread that requires nothing. No oven, no flour, no mixing. Hardtac fills the caloric gap, but it is not comfort food. Canned brown bread is. You open it, slice it, and eat it. That matters more than people realize when everything else in your environment is already stressful. A can costs about $3. I keep 20 cans on my shelves. Most of the country has no idea this product exists outside of a narrow regional tradition. You can find it online or at stores carrying New England specialty items. The 11th food is fermented black beans. Not to be confused with the standard dried black beans in your bulk bin, these are salted, fermented soybeans that come in small jars or sealed pouches, found almost exclusively at Asian grocery stores. 1 tablespoon of these can transform an entire pot of plain rice into something that tastes genuinely complex and savory. They are extraordinarily concentrated in flavor. Because they are both fermented and heavily salted, their shelf life extends for years without any special storage effort. I have a jar that has been in my pantry for 3 years, still perfect. The fermentation process also creates active probiotics, and gut health under survival stress is not a trivial concern. A disrupted microbiome compounds every other physical and psychological strain you are already dealing with. But beyond the health angle, the practical value here is enormous. 1 small jar can season dozens of meals. The cost is roughly $3 per jar. A Chinese coworker introduced me to these a few years ago. You rinse them briefly, chop them fine, and add them to stir-fries, soups, or grain dishes. I keep 10 jars in my stockpile for a total cost of about $30, but the value per dollar in terms of making food actually palatable over weeks is exponential. The 12th food is suet. This one goes back to the most old-school survival logic there is, and that is exactly why it works. Suet is the dense, hard fat found around beef kidneys. It is almost pure fat, which means it is extraordinarily calorie-dense, roughly 240 calories per ounce. When you are physically active during a crisis and burning through energy reserves fast, fat is not a dietary luxury. It's the fuel your body is specifically demanding. Historic expedition accounts consistently show suet as a core survival ration. British naval crews carried suet pudding on long voyages. Arctic explorers packed it because, unlike other fats, it does not fully solidify even at temperatures well below freezing. You can buy suet at butcher shops or certain grocery stores for nearly nothing because almost nobody today knows what to do with it. I bought 2 pounds last month for $3. You render it down by chopping it small and applying low, slow heat until the fat melts free. Strain out the solids, and what remains is pure tallow, shelf-stable for years without refrigeration. You can also combine rendered suet with dried meat and berries to produce pemmican, which is historically one of the highest-calorie, longest-lasting survival foods ever developed. Ask a local butcher who processes beef whether they sell suet. Most will practically hand it over. The prepping world ignores suet because it seems like something from another century. Things from another century survived for a reason. The 13th food is pure MSG, monosodium glutamate. This will be controversial for some people, and I genuinely do not care, because the evidence is clear and the practical value is real. MSG is a flavor enhancer. A very small amount added to a meal activates the umami receptors in your mouth and makes food taste significantly more satisfying. In a situation where you are eating plain rice and beans for week 3, flavor is not a small thing. It is a psychological survival tool. When food tastes genuinely good, you feel satiated faster. That means your stockpile stretches further. The FDA classifies MSG as generally recognized as safe. The health concerns attached to it were generated by a single anecdotal letter published in a medical journal in the 1960s and have been debunked by decades of controlled research since then. A 1-pound bag of pure MSG costs around $5 and will season meals for years. I tested this myself during a personal stockpile challenge. Week 1, plain rice and beans, no seasoning additions. By day 4, I was miserable. The meals felt like a form of punishment. Week 2, same food, tiny pinch of MSG in every meal. The same rice and beans suddenly tasted like something I would willingly choose to eat. My mood improved noticeably. I felt full of smaller portions. That psychological shift is not trivial in a long-duration situation. I keep 2 pounds in my stockpile for about $10 total. During every shortage I have ever witnessed, MSG sits fully stocked because people are still avoiding it based on a myth that was scientifically laid to rest decades ago. Their reluctance is your advantage. Now, let's talk about storage, because this is the part where most people make critical mistakes that quietly destroy everything they have worked to build. The food choices matter, but if your storage system is wrong, the best stockpile in the world becomes garbage within months. Your storage location is the single most important variable. I made the classic beginner mistake of keeping everything in my garage. Convenient, easy to access, all in one place. Then summer arrived, and that garage hit over 100 degrees. I opened a sealed bucket of rice 3 months later and found condensation trapped inside. The rice had already started going off. I lost 50 pounds of food because I did not account for temperature swing. My main stockpile now lives in the coolest, darkest section of my basement. Temperatures hold between 50 and 70 degrees year-round. No windows, no sunlight. Ultraviolet exposure is a silent destroyer of stored food. It breaks down nutrients, oxidizes fats, and eliminates vitamins. Even indirect sunlight through a small window can cut projected shelf life in half. Humidity is equally dangerous and less obvious. I made a second mistake storing dried beans near my washing machine in the basement. The moisture generated by laundry over time created just enough ambient humidity that mold spots appeared on the beans. 30 pounds, gone. Everything in my storage now sits at least 10 feet from any water source. For bulk dry goods, rice, beans, dried corn, I use food-grade 5-gallon buckets fitted with Gamma Seal lids. The Gamma Seal design is not a preference, it is a functional necessity. Standard bucket lids require a pry tool to open, and they resist you every time. You will avoid rotating your stockpile just because accessing it is annoying. Gamma Seals thread on and off by hand. That ease of access means you will actually use and cycle through your supplies on schedule. I run 30 of these buckets. Each one with lid costs roughly $15. Inside every bucket, I use Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. The Mylar creates a combined barrier against light and moisture. The oxygen absorbers pull residual oxygen out of the sealed environment, preventing oxidation and eliminating any insect eggs that might be present in the grain. I use 2,000 cc absorbers for 5-gallon Mylar bags, purchased in bulk, 100 absorbers for about $25. The process is straightforward. Place the Mylar bag inside the open bucket, fill it with your dry goods, leaving roughly 2 inches of clearance at the top. Drop in the oxygen absorber, seal the Mylar along the top with a clothing iron set on high, running it across the bag in a single slow pass. Close the bucket with the Gamma Seal lid, label it with contents and date using a permanent marker on the outside. This system maintains rice and beans in genuinely usable condition for 20 to 30 years. I have opened buckets I sealed 8 years ago and found the contents indistinguishable from freshly purchased product. For canned goods, I built basic shelving in my basement from 2x4s and plywood, about $80 in materials. Organization by category: canned meat on one shelf, canned vegetables on the next, fruit separate. During a real emergency, you are not leisurely browsing. You are moving fast under stress. Chaos costs time. Organized shelving costs nothing and saves everything. Rotation follows a first-in, first-out discipline. New product goes to the back of the shelf, you pull from the front. Every 6 months, I walk the entire stockpile and check dates. Anything within 6 months of expiration moves to the kitchen for active use. I have not thrown away a single expired item using the system. One last thing about storage before we move on. Start right now with whatever scale you can manage. Do not wait for the ideal setup. Do not wait till you can afford 30 buckets in a dedicated room. Buy 1 bucket, fill it with rice, seal it properly, put it in a closet if a basement is not available. That 1 bucket puts you ahead of the majority of households in this country. Next month, a second bucket with beans. 6 months from now, you have 6 months of staple calories secured. Now layer in these 13 foods one at a time. This month, a box of shelf-stable lard. Next month, a few cans of fish roe. The month after, a 50-pound bag of dried corn from the feed.
You are building a stockpile composed almost entirely of foods that nobody else is competing for. That is how this actually works. If you have stayed with this video all the way to this point, you are already operating at a different level than most people who think about preparedness but never move past thinking. That matters. What I need you to do right now is go hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds. It tells the algorithm that this kind of real, specific information is worth pushing to more people. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, do that right now, because this is exactly the kind of content I keep making. Specific, tested, and deliberately different from the recycled material filling up every other feed. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 13 surprised you most, or which one you are going to add first. I read every comment and I build future content directly from what you tell me. Share this with one person, just one, who has been thinking about getting more serious about their own preparedness. A private message is fine. And then go take one action today. One item from this list. Buy it, store it, and cross it off. Because when the next shortage materializes, and it will, you will be the person walking calmly past the empty shelves while everyone else scrambles. That is the entire